Here's everything you need to know about the Emergence in the Eternals. After spending the past 7,000 years or so just hanging out, the Eternals are finally ready to become the heroes the Marvel Cinematic Universe so desperately needs. And while we have to wait until November 5th to experience the full cosmic weirdness of Jack Kirby's Space Gods in person, the final trailer for the Chloe Zhao-directed film was jam-packed with clues, Easter eggs, and hints about what we can expect from Phase 4's most mysterious entry. As we touched upon in our trailer breakdown, after scattering to the winds, the Eternals must reunite to stop an apocalypse-level event known only as the Emergence. If they don't stop it in 7 days, then it's going to be the end of the world as we know it, and nobody's feeling fine. It's something that scares even these immortal godlike beings to their core. But what exactly is the Emergence? What kind of threat does this pose to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? It's all rooted in an ancient conflict between the Eternals and the Deviants and their cosmic creators, the Celestials. We're going to break it all down in just a moment, including how this connects back to the comic books. However, if you prefer to go into this movie unburdened with knowledge, make like Icarus and kindly avert your eyes. Okay, let's get into it, shall we? As explained by Salma Hayek's Ajax, the Emergence is a mysterious event that was triggered by the massive wave of gamma radiation unleashed by Bruce Banner snapping the Infinity Gauntlet in Avengers Endgame to undo Thanos' Planos, which, as What If confirmed, is basically just genocide no matter how you slice it.
And I'm pretty sure it's efficient.
While one might be tempted to assume the Emergence refers to the emergence of the Deviants, given that we know the Deviant warlord Crow will appear in this movie and is clearly up to no good with Thena in the trailer, it is in fact referring to a Celestial emerging on Earth for the first time in centuries. Now, in case you're like, what the hell did you just say to me? Let's explain some basic Eternals lore. Created by Jack Kirby in 1976, the Eternals are a near-immortal race of superpowered beings. They're one of 3 distinct races created by the all-powerful Celestials who came to Earth centuries ago to play a cosmic version of The Sims with a bunch of apes that became you and me. The 3 races are the Eternals, us humans, and those awful monstrous Deviants. According to the trailers, though, the origin story seems to be a little bit different. The Celestials seemingly sent the Eternals to Earth 7,000 years ago to protect mankind from the Deviants with the caveat that they cannot interfere unless Deviants are involved, which is why they didn't bother with Thanos or like any other MCU crisis. Besides, in the comics, Thanos is technically an Eternal with a Deviant gene, so they probably just gave him a pass as their purple pal from another Celestial. Mostly though, I'm just a little bit confused because didn't they also make the Deviants and then send them to Earth too? What, Celestials? What are you doing? What's your endgame here? I don't know. We'll find out. In the comics, Celestials travel the galaxy and subject different planets to hosts, which are deadly tests given to planets they've experimented on to see whether they are worthy of preservation or they should be exterminated. So definitely a test you don't want to fail, but thankfully it seems like there aren't any more proctors around to give them. Because in the modern incarnation of the MCU, it seems like most of the Celestials are either dead or missing, at least the ones we know of. The last known Celestial, Ego the Living Planet, died in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when his half-Celestial son Peter Quill and the Guardians took him to task for being the world's worst dad. Although we do see 2 other Celestials, Arishem the Judge and Jemiah the Analyzer, in this trailer, we have a sinking suspicion they're either far, far away from Earth, or those scenes took place thousands of years in the past and they'll feature in the movie as flashbacks, if at all. So the emergence of a brand new Celestial would obviously be a big deal for both the Eternals and the Deviants, especially if they're existing as though their cosmic overlord shuffled off this immortal coil. Now, during the trailer, we see a mysterious object rocketing to Earth, creating massive tidal waves upon impact. This, when taken in conjunction with what we just described, indicates 2 distinct possibilities, both of which have precedent in the comics: the awakening of the dreaming Celestial or the hatching of a Celestial egg. Let's start with the dreaming Celestial. In the comics, nearly 500,000 years ago, the Deviants lived in a kingdom on a continent called Lemuria, and they ruled over it with human slaves. They were at war with another long-lost kingdom known as Atlantis when the second host of Celestials arrived on Earth to check in on their pale blue petri dish. And those smooth-brained geniuses, the Deviants, decided to try and attack and dethrone their space god, so they fired on the Celestial ship, which didn't end well for them. The Celestials responded by destroying Lemuria and unleashing a shockwave known as the Great Cataclysm, which also led to the sinking of Atlantis, among other things. And while we likely won't see Atlantis until Black Panther Wakanda Forever at the earliest, the damage was done and the Deviants fled underground where they declared an unspoken truce with the Eternals. Slowly but surely, though, deviant society became radicalized, morphing into a religious oligarchy that worshipped an entity known as Tiamat, the Dreaming Celestial. As depicted in Eternals Volume 4, Number 3, Tiamat was a renegade celestial that fought against other members of its host to prevent the deviants from being exterminated. Imprisoned in a massive vault beneath California's Diablo Mountains, Tiamat's life force was drained into a device known as the Vial, and a fraction of its soul was channeled into a key. But in this theocratic society, deviant priest lords gained outsized influence and power over their people. And as the old saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely, especially if you're a damn dirty deviant. During the events of Eternals Volume 2, Number 10 through 12, a priest lord named Gar stole Tiamat's power for himself, basically giving himself the full might of a celestial. And while I don't expect to see Gar appear in the MCU, at least in this movie, another conniving villain like Crow could be manipulating the Eternals and the Deviants alike to imbue himself with the power of the Dreaming Celestial after its emergence. And if that happens, Crow could effectively administer the equivalent of the fourth host from the comics, deeming both mankind and the Eternals unworthy of preservation. This would leave the Deviants to inherit a planet that we've had no problem ruining all by ourselves. As established by Eternals Volume 4, Tiamat's original mission to Earth was to basically send a signal to a being known as Fulcrum to determine when planet Earth's life force was ready to harvest, either by the Celestials or by another group of nightmarish insect creatures called the Horde. Anyway, long story short, you don't want this dude to wake up and text anybody, especially if it starts taking control of every living creature on Earth like we saw in Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr.'s Eternals Volume 3. But the only way to stop the Dreaming Celestial, and by proxy the Horde, from destroying Earth is by forming a Unimind, which combines all the Eternals' consciousnesses into one being. It's something we saw happen in the first trailer for Eternals. And this unique Eternals ability will likely play a key factor in saving the day, whether they use it to put the Dreaming Celestial back to sleep, or they use it to de-escalate whatever might hatch from our second option, the Celestial Egg. Speaking of which, can we offer you a nice celestial egg in these trying times? Because that's what the Eternals' cosmic parents are basically asking planet Earth thousands and thousands of years ago when they made a deposit deep below the surface. Kinda like that one that Ego made behind the Dairy Queen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but different. In 2010's S.H.I.E.L.D. number 4, it was revealed that a celestial egg had been planted inside the Earth to slowly gestate for eons upon eons. And when it's finally birthed, the Celestial will emerge and consume the planet and all of its energy. We're basically like a giant Capri Sun, but full of blood. This is absolutely a world-ending threat that would require the Eternals to finally intervene if they have any hope of continuing their relatively carefree existence here on Earth. This also adds a sinister nihilism to Crow's line in the trailer about how Thena won't be able to protect anyone. Maybe adopting a scorched earth policy, Crow and co are taking a page out of Admiral Hux's playbook and ensuring that no matter who wins, the Eternals lose.
I'm the spy.
Besides, what's a little cosmic obliteration if you get to ensure your lifelong enemies get destroyed as well, right? Adding further fuel to this fire, though, are the shots of Cersei in the trailer walking through what appears to be a massive celestial chamber, maybe a version of the God Chamber in the City of the Space Gods that we glimpsed in the very first issues of Eternals. At one point, Cersei interacts with a mysterious object that seems to glow with life and respond to energy, indicating it could be the celestial egg slowly forming. The crystalline structure of that object is very similar to the crystalline structure of a celestial statue we saw the Eternals gathered around earlier in the trailer as well. Of course, what's most likely is that Eternals will take elements of the Dreaming Celestial storyline and the Celestial Egg and combine them. Maybe Eternals will end with our heroes managing to deactivate the newly hatched Celestial Tiamat and turning this potential harbinger of destruction into a hibernator of distraction. By putting him to sleep, the Eternals could then figure out a way to deal with this cosmic menace over the course of Phase 4 and 5, as well as in the inevitable sequel, Eternals. In the meantime, though, the Eternals are going to have their hands full with Crow and the gang, as well as the biggest villain of them all, dangerously weak tables in the IKEA Fall Collection. However it shakes out, we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest theories and deep dives over on Nerdist.com, at least until Eternals hits theaters and gives us some answers this fall. But first, folks, tell us, what do you think of this theory? What do you think the Emergence actually is? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.